USPAP page 282, Appraisal Development dash Extraordinary Assumptions and Hypothetical Conditions continued. Number 218, Before Acquisition Value and Standards Rule 1-4F. Question: I'm doing an appraisal assignment for a government agency that is subject to the provisions of the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisitions Act of 1970, as amended, commonly known as the Uniform Act, and its implementing Regulation 49 CFR Part 24. In the before acquisition value appraisal, the regulation requires appraisers to disregard any decrease or increase in the market value of the property that has been caused directly by the project. This regulation appears to conflict with USPAP Standards Rule 1-4F, which addresses the analysis of the effect on value of anticipated public or private improvements. Obviously, I must comply with the federal law and regulations, but I am unsure how to reconcile this with the requirements of USPAP Standards Rule 1-4F. Does this situation create a USPAP jurisdictional exemption, or is this simply an assignment condition? Response: when it applies, 49 CFR Part 24 is an assignment condition. The 49 CFR Part 24 regulation that requires appraisers to disregard any decrease or increase in the market value of the property that has been caused directly by the project in the before acquisition value appraisal is not a jurisdictional exemption because the regulation does not conflict with the requirements of USPAP. A jurisdictional exemption is only created where USPAP compliance is precluded by a requirement of law or regulation. Standards Rule 1-4F becomes applicable in an assignment only when the scope of work includes the analysis of anticipated improvements. When analyzing anticipated public or private improvements located on or off the site, an appraiser must analyze the effect on value, if any, of such anticipated improvements to the extent they are reflected in market actions. Bold added for emphasis. The intended use of the assignment drives the appraiser's decisions in identifying relevant property characteristics and assignment conditions. The decision to analyze the effect on value of an anticipated off-site improvement is part of the scope of work decision. The scope of work in before acquisition value assignments prepared under the Uniform Act is based on a condition that anticipated project improvement will not be recognized. Therefore, Standards Rule 1-4F does not apply. In an appraisal, when an assumed condition that is contrary to known fact, the assumed condition is a hypothetical condition. A before acquisition value appraisal assignment that does not include recognition of the project would require the use of a hypothetical condition because this is contrary to a known fact. The comment to Standards Rule 1-2G states, a hypothetical condition may be used in an assignment only if, that's highlighted, use of the hypothetical condition is clearly required for legal purposes, for purposes of reasonable analysis, or for purposes of comparison. Use of the hypothetical condition results in a credible analysis and the appraiser complies with the disclosure requirements set forth in USPAP for hypothetical conditions. Bold added for emphasis. In the reporting of a real property appraisal report, USPAP Standards Rule 2-1C states that the real property appraisal report must clearly and accurately disclose all assumptions, extraordinary assumptions, hypothetical conditions, that's highlighted, and limiting conditions used in the assignment, bold added for emphasis. This requirement creates an obligation to disclose all hypothetical conditions used in the assignment. USPAP Real Property Appraisal Report requirements state that the report must, at a minimum, clearly and conspicuously, page 283, state all extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions, that's highlighted, and state that their use might have affected the assignment results, bold added for emphasis. This requirement directs the appraiser to provide a clear and conspicuous statement of the hypothetical conditions. The form and location of the statement is left to the discretion of the appraiser, but it must be clear and conspicuous to intended users. Number 219, reporting use of extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions. Question: what are the USPAP reporting requirements relating to the use of extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions in an appraisal assignment? Response: the report must clearly disclose the use of extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions and notify intended users that the extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions might have affected the assignment results. For example, Standards Rule 2-1C states that each written or oral real property appraisal report must clearly and accurately disclose all assumptions, extraordinary assumptions, hypothetical conditions, and limiting conditions used, that's highlighted, in the assignment, bold added for emphasis. This requirement creates an obligation to disclose all extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions used in the assignment. For example, Standards Rule 2-2A, Roman numeral 11, states that an appraisal report must, at a minimum, clearly and conspicuously state, that's highlighted, all extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions, and state, that's highlighted, that their use might have affected the assignment results, bold added for emphasis. This requirement directs the appraiser to provide a clear and conspicuous statement of the extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions. The form and location of the statement is left to the discretion of the appraiser, but it must be clear and conspicuous to intended users. The requirement further directs the appraiser to provide notice to intended users that the use of the extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions might have affected the assignment results. The appraiser is not required to report on the impact of the extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions on assignment results. Note, the requirements for other report types are similar. Number 220. Must a hypothetical condition or extraordinary assumption be labeled? Question: if I employ a hypothetical condition or an extraordinary assumption in an assignment, does USPAP require me to label it as such? Response: no. USPAP does not require use of the specific terms hypothetical condition or extraordinary assumption. USPAP requires that all hypothetical conditions and extraordinary assumptions be disclosed clearly and conspicuously, and it must be disclosed that their use might affect the assignment results. Enter page.